What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. This is your girl Christina, and I am back with another late night Friday night video because this is my life now on Fridays. I don't go out, I don't do anything, I can't really go out. My girls are asleep, and so I basically have nothing to do but to sit here contemplating about life and serious issues and then coming on here and making a video for you guys. So anyway, the topic of today's video, I titled it Policing Cultural / Racial Identity, as well as individual or collective mindset ? So what the heck do I mean by all that? So basically, I'm referring to people within certain ethnic or racial groups kind of judging other people from those same cultural, ethnic, or racial groups depending on where they stand on certain issues, and whether it's okay for us to be individuals with our own opinions, or if we have to kind of follow the masses on, where they stand on certain topics. So I don't know if this is just me, but I feel like society, not just here in the US, but kind of everywhere, is becoming more and more polarized than it already was. I feel like it's expected more that you align yourself with a particular side on certain issues, whether it's societal issues, race issues, political issues. It's like people looking at you like, what side are you on? And if you choose to be kind of neutral, it's like you still get kind of side-eyed, or if you're like, I don't really care either way, you look that kind of funny. Or if you happen to stand on the side that the majority are not on, you still get looked that kind of funny. So I feel like, within each cultural or racial group, there are certain ideologies or values that I guess the majority of the people hold. And so they would expect you to kind of follow those same ideologies. And, that's fine, depending on what those values are. And like I think here in the US, there are a lot of people that value, individualism, individual expression, personal individual rights, things like that. And, I think that's good. I think especially because we live in a country that is so diverse, it is good to keep those individual or cultural identities intact. But okay, so for this video, I'm going to focus more on, I guess, what I feel sometimes happens within Latin American cultures, and more specifically within like Dominicans, because of course that is a group that I am most familiar with. And I do feel like I see Dominicans a lot of times kind of policing other people's Dominican or Dominicanness or Dominicanidad, based upon how they feel either towards certain other groups of people, or just certain topics in general. So I think people that are from Latin America, or they descend from Latin American countries, like say you were born here, but your parents came from a Latin American countries, I think for the most part, we're very prideful people. We represent our cultures and our countries a lot. And I think for the most part, that cultural identity usually supersedes any type of racial or like political identity. I think that most people are able to connect and find common ground amongst each other, with other people from that same group, because I do think that there is more of a cohesiveness within the band of culture. And yeah, so, even though we may come from different walks of life and have different life experiences, because we come from this same culture, there's like a sense of unity there. However, once you get past that initial layer, and you dig deeper, and then you come to learn people's opposing views, that's when people will start to look at you more like, all right, so how do you really feel about this? Or how do you feel about that? And if you have a view or a position or opinion that is different than theirs, then it becomes an issue. Now, I feel like for Dominicans, the issues that people tend to be split on is how you feel about Haitians. Should there be a wall between the Dominican Republic and Haiti? race politics, especially racial identification. You know, because you find Dominicans that hop around saying, we're mixed, which we are. We are a mixed race people. But then there are others that actually do identify with just one race, whether it be just black or just white. And people will have issues with that, especially if you identify as black. People tend to have issue with that. And then, of course, there are certain groups of people that some Dominicans view as our enemy. And if you don't view them as an enemy, then it's a problem. So, you know, I feel like sometimes certain people from a particular group, they kind of assume that we're all supposed to feel the same way about every single issue. And if you don't, it's like for us, you're not really Dominican if you don't think this way, or you don't really have the interest of the country at heart, or, you know, you're a Mende Patria. And I really have an issue with that because it's like, one, we're not a monolith. And this goes for any racial or cultural group. It's like, we're not all the same. And because we are such a diverse group of people, you know, our individual experiences and perspectives are not going to be the same. So to expect us to all think exactly the same way, I'm just kind of like, how? Especially on like the race topics. Like, my opinion, I don't feel that you can expect, say, a Dominican that is black or, you know, very, like, obviously predominantly African descent to have the same type of racial identity or maybe even ideology as a Dominican that is, you know, mainly white or European descent, unless you're one of those Dominicans that doesn't really give much thought, because those Dominicans exist. As I said before, the topic of race was not something that really came up in my family. But there are those that do look at it more, and so they may side with one side more than the other. But it's like, you know, people have issues with how you choose to self-identify, which to me, I'm like, why? How does it affect you how I choose to self-identify when it comes to my race, you know? And another thing that really irks me with a lot of these Dominicans online, it's mainly online, because my family members or the other Dominicans I come across in real life are not like a lot of the ones I find online. But they seem to center or base their Dominicanness, or they judge others' Dominicanness based off of who they hate, or, you know, the groups of people that they are against. And it's like, yo, y'all make us look bad, because you're making us look out to be these like super hateful people when in reality we're not that way. Like, most of us are not that way. You know, like, we don't base our identity off of hating other groups of people. Like, that's just crazy to me. And, you know, I will say, so Dominicans, along with most Latin Americans, are many times very nationalistic, and, you know, that's fine. And, you know, there are a few Dominican nationalists that comment on my videos, and I see them comment on other Dominican YouTubers' videos, and I consider them to be good examples of what a Dominican nationalist should be, because I do see that they do have the best interests of the country at heart, and some of them have educated me on a lot of stuff, and I don't see them going around with all this hateful rhetoric, you know? And the thing about them is that they are the ones that I see that actually present facts to the things that they say. Like, they back up their opinions. Unlike some of these other so-called Dominican nationalists, that all they do is repeat the same hateful crap over and over again, and they're just talking purely based off of their feelings and emotions. And that leads me to my next one, which I think there is a fine line between nationalism and xenophobia. What I see happen is that people will sometimes mask their racism behind the face of nationalism, and it's like they claim that they're nationalists, but really they're low-key like just hateful and this, like, you know, groups of people from other countries. And that I don't feel is okay. I think that you can have love for your country and that you can defend your country and speak out on certain issues that, you know, pertain to that country without like completely talking down on and just crapping on people from other countries. And, you know, the thing is, I don't ever try to, you know, dismiss anyone's individual experiences. And I do think that there are real threats in the Dominican Republic. And I do think these are things that people should be aware of. And I would say some of those real threats are poverty, illiteracy, the need for better education. And I do think that the illegal immigration issue does need to be controlled. I mean, it does. That just is what it is. But I don't think that while addressing those issues, it needs to come from a point of hate. You know what I mean? Or, I don't know, just completely, or talking about Haitians as if they were like subhuman, you know, stuff like that. I just feel like there's ways that you can express your concerns without being hateful, you know? Now, and the next thing is when it comes to racial identity or these supposed race wars that people keep mentioning, I'm like, look, if someone chooses to call themselves Afro-Latino, or if a Dominican or some other Hispanic person chooses to identify as Black, like that is their individual choice. Nobody is forcing them to do that. And I see that a lot, like, if you identify as an Afro-Latino, like you're trying to appeal to another group of Black people, or, you know, you're being forced to do that by these other groups. Like most of the people that I see identify as that, I think they're doing it really out of their own will. And, you know, it's funny because as much as people like to act like, you know, racism doesn't really exist in Latin America, it does. And I mean, of course, not to the extent that it has in this country. I mean, nowhere near that. But racism and colorism does exist. And the fact that so many, you know, the fact that so many more Hispanics and Dominicans too are starting to identify more with their Black or African roots, and that so many people have an issue with that, is very telling, I think, of the low-key racism that still does exist in Hispanic cultures. I just feel like, you know, I know that a lot of Hispanics say, well, we don't like to, you know, we don't adopt like that, what is it called? Like that crayon box color ideology. We don't try to fit into one box. We just mix, and that's that. But the truth of the matter is, there are people that do just identify as white, or they do just identify as Black. And if they choose to do so, what's the problem? Like, how does it affect you if I say choose to identify as Black, like a Black Hispanic? Of course, I identify as Dominican before anything else. And I mean, I do consider myself mixed race, but again, if I had to choose one, I'm going to choose Black because that's what I look like more. But it's like, how does that affect you? Like, ¿por qué te duele? Like, why do you care what I or another Dominican or another Hispanics choose to identify as when it comes to race, you know? So anyway, the point of all this is, just because you belong to a certain culture doesn't mean that we're all going to think exactly the same. And at the end of the day, we all have a love for our culture, but, you know, we also have our own individual opinions. And I've noticed this even under a few other Dominican YouTubers' videos, where it's like, if their position on something isn't exactly the same as like the next person, or maybe even the majority, they automatically kind of get questioned or looked at differently. Like, what's your motive? Like, where do you really stand? Do you really care about Dominican people like that? And, you know, they might get kind of low-key attacked for it or get called names. I mean, I've had that happen to me because of my position on certain things. So again, it's like, it's a problem. And, you know, we love hearing about the good things about ourselves, but, you know, sometimes you have to point out the flaws. And, you know, I can only speak for Dominicans, but, you know, as much great qualities that we have, we also have our flaws. And, you know, how are we ever going to improve and better as a people if we don't point them out? So anyway, that was it for this video, guys, and just my opinion and my thoughts on this situation or subject, whatever you want to call it. So let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.